Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lockton Marine podcast. My name is Anders Langeland Johannessen. Today I'm joined by Lars Benjamin Vold, who's the managing director of Norma Cyber. And we are here today to talk about GPS interference or GPS spoofing or GPS jamming. I'm sure you're going to tell us the difference later on, Lars Benjamin. And it's a companion piece to the episode where we talk about the insurance implications of GPS interference events. But I think, even as an insurance person, this is the most interesting and certainly the most exciting piece of the puzzle. So welcome, Lars Benjamin.
Thank you very much, Anders, and thank you for inviting me to the podcast.
Could you, as a point of departure, give us an introduction to Norma Cyber? I'm sure it's familiar. It's a familiar brand to many of our listeners, but to those who do not know what you do and who you are, if you could just please give us a brief introduction.
Sure. So Nordic Maritime Cyber Resilience Center, or we're often just known by Norma Cyber, we were established now almost 5 years ago by the Norwegian Shipowners Association and the Norwegian War Risk Insurance Club. And the whole purpose of this was really just to have a joint initiative to address some of the challenges that many of the ship owners, especially back then, now more and more maritime companies, see within cybersecurity. So we are very much operational focused. We handle, so it is a membership model where members get access to membership services, which consists of incident and crisis support services, where we support members on different types of less or more severe incidents. We do a lot of threat intelligence and information sharing. So we encourage members to share information with us, and we distribute that back to all members. And we do a few other initiatives also, but that's kind of the two main components. We also host a range of different, knowledge sharing events and conferences, and we have a monthly webinar for members and so on. So quite a few different types of initiatives we do, but we're very much focused on operational support to our members within cybersecurity. And this is also, of course, a lot focused on vessels, since we're focused on maritime, but we also handle more kind of land-based or incidents happening, or attempted incidents happen towards the land-based part of the organization also. And since the very beginning, back in 2021, we also have focused on GPS spoofing and jamming, or GNSS interference, which is more of a broader term, which you also then include other positioning systems than just GPS. But so I will probably use the term GNSS interference quite a lot, or GNSS spoofing, jamming. But so this is normally a topic which is referred to more as electronic warfare than cybersecurity, where cybersecurity originally were more IT security, basically someone trying to attack a computer, and then electronic warfare was more, jamming of communication systems. Then obviously these two fields have kind of been intertwined, and at least we, from our perspective, look very much into these two things together. And we also kind of provide a lot of report and insight to our members on the more historically more electronic warfare aspect of incidents.
Okay. So let's follow up that. So there's a number of terms and a number of definitions there that I think it would be useful to clarify. And in simple terms, what is GPS spoofing? When people talk about it, because it's a term that's now used in the media and in industry publications and things. What is your definition or your idea of what a GPS spoofing event is?
So we can, it's often easier to explain this when starting with explaining jamming. So GPS jamming is when basically someone is transmitting a signal which is so within the same frequency band as normal GPS signals is received. They are transmitting a very high signal, or very powerful signal, which just jams out the signal from the satellite. So that means you, as a master mariner or someone on board a vessel, will see, hey, we don't have GPS. So that basically it jams the whole signal out, and you can't receive it. The other thing, as you mentioned, is often referred to, and which we see more and more of reported about, is GPS spoofing. So this is the term used where a GPS signal is altered. So that means, and there are some, on technical level, a bit of different ways of doing it. But in short, that means as a master mariner or someone navigating, you will see that you have a false position. Your position is located somewhere else on the map than where you actually are physically.
Right.
So that's kind of the two biggest terms. And then I use normally GNSS. That means that's the Global Navigation Satellite Systems. That's a general phrase for all types of positioning systems, because you have GPS, obviously, which is very common, but you also have Galileo and Baidu, which is the Chinese one. So, and of course, these types of interferences can, of course, affect not only GPS, but also the other type of positioning systems. So that's why we often use, GNSS, spoofing, jamming, or GNSS interference, which is kind of the umbrella terminology here for both.
Yeah. So how will such interference be experienced on board a ship? Because it sounds like a jamming, there will be no doubt that you will know that something's interfering with your systems, whereas a spoofing can be more subtle, right? So you're not necessarily aware that you're under attack, as it were.
Yeah. So of course, I think it's worth mentioning also that kind of loss of GPS signal can also be caused by other things, right? So this is also why we perhaps see that this is not reported that widely, right, in some cases, in some areas, because it can be, other reasons for it to happening, which are non kind of malicious or non done by a perpetrator, so to say. So, but for the user, I mean, it will just be, if you're a victim of GPS jamming, you will basically just lose your GPS signal, and then so. And that can happen, really. We see it often happen in many of the areas where you see geopolitical tensions. We see where we see regional conflicts, and I think quite a bit of that, especially the jamming part, is often conducted by different navies or other in conjunction with military activity, because that is one of the measures these navies take to protect themselves, right? Because especially, drones or other types of weapons can use GPS, of course, as one or more of their systems to, hit their targets. That's one of the measures they might take to protect themselves. So in some cases, or many cases, we suspect, especially when it comes to jamming, that this is done more of kind of in what's often in military terms called force protection.
Right. Does that mean that shipping's not necessarily the target, that they are just the ships are victims caught in the crossfire?
We don't really know for sure, but we suspect that, at least from our side, because when you look at the areas where we typically see GPS, or GNSS interference, you see that overlap very much with areas where there are known conflicts. We have seen it especially in the in the Black Sea area, obviously in the Eastern Mediterranean, now in the Red Sea, in the Gulf, in the South China Sea, but now also recently more and more in the Baltic Sea, in the Strait of Finland, and also in the far north,
So do you have any known examples of GNSS interference that have had consequences for sailing vessels?
Yeah, so we've seen a few examples of that. So when it comes to, I would say especially GPS jamming, as I mentioned, we have seen this reported on and off now ever since we started Norma, and before that also. And I think the reported GPS jamming incidents have been kind of happening, especially in these kind of areas where there are military activity. I think what we've seen more reporting of is GPS spoofing now. And I think one example there is, which I think is widely known, is that when we saw a spike in the conflict in the Middle East here in June, where first Israel and then later US started to bomb strategic targets in Iran. You saw a spike in GPS spoofing and jamming, but especially spoofing in the Gulf. So we saw very all of a sudden, just after that bombing started, we saw reporting from multiple entities that GPS spoofing was just going through the roof. And there we saw that almost all signals, all vessels who came in the strait, going through Hormuz and then entering Arabian Persian Gulf, they were spoofed to a circular pattern on land in Iran. So I think perhaps you've seen there were some news reports of this.
Yes.
But and of course, as a deck officer or someone standing on the bridge, this of course you will also notify or see quite instantly because your position on the actives is kind of taken to land. So, and this lasted basically as long as that spike in the conflict lasted, and after that it just disappeared again almost overnight.
And in a situation like that lasts over a bit of time, we must be talking about a significant number of affected vessels.
Yes. Yeah, obviously. I don't remember the exact figures, but of course there are, huge amount of vessels going through the Strait of Hormuz. I think from our side, when we looked at the Norma Cyber membership, we have, 120 plus member organizations. Many of them are ship owners. They're represented with almost 2,700 vessels. I think when we did the kind of an overview here together with the Ship Owners Association and DNK, it's around kind of a bit less than 50 Norwegian owned or operated vessels in that area at any given time, just from the Norwegian side. And there are kind of multiple more, obviously. So we saw that, and you might think that, of course, shipping, could or would stop because of this. But of course, there are, I think the way it affected, especially our members, we saw some reported that they changed their internal procedures to only transit during daytime or during light hours. And they also put paper charts on board the vessels just, to have a redundancy. Which is not a requirement, by the way, anymore. So it's it's a requirement with two separate active terminals, but then many of them took kind of self measures by themselves to make sure they were able to sail, and they continued to sail. And we saw also that on AIS, obviously, that most of the operations continued almost as usual.
Which leads to my next question, which is, so how is interference like this experienced on board a ship? And I realize that there will be many different nuances to that. So as you said, it depends. Is it daytime? Is it nighttime? What kind of traffic do you have around you? What kind of other systems do you have? But if you can try to paint a picture of what it feels like on board a ship to experience this kind of interference.
Yeah, this is where I think this is relatively fascinating. I think myself, I'm not the master mariner myself. I haven't stood kind of on a deck myself, but I've talked to a lot of seafarers, and we have personnel here in Norma, also have our deck officer originally. So I think it's interesting to kind of dig into how does that really affect the operations of our members, right, and the operations of a vessel. And I think this is, at least from my experience, is many, especially the older seafarers, they say, "Hey, what's the big deal? Your main way or support measures from navigating a vessel is your eyes, right? And and you have multiple instruments, and GPS is only a support tool. So this is not a big deal. You still have to verify your position and kind of do what you're perform good seamanship, right? So I think there's still quite a few who still are there, but I think especially nowadays, where more and more of this is automated, I think many rely more and more and take GPS for granted. I think if you especially if you take kind of other aspects or other, let's say you have bad weather, or you have, less trained crew, or you have something else happening, right, which makes the whole situation a bit more complex. I think it's likely that, sooner or later you will see instances where, this is, or GPS spoofing or jamming have been one of the causes, or one of the affecting root causes for an incident. Now, there are some instances recently where we have seen reporting of that, and I just have to be really transparent and say I have no kind of knowledge of these cases specifically, and I only know these cases from media and from what's been reported in the open media. But in May, in the Red Sea, we had a incident with a vessel called MSC Antonia. It was reported widely in the news also that she grounded, and it is also reported that it was immense or kind of quite extensive GNSS interference, especially GPS spoofing in the area at that time. When that is said, we don't really know for sure that it was actually the GPS spoofing which led to or had a direct or kind of directly caused the incident happened. We don't really know for that still, and I haven't seen that. I guess that quite a few insurers are really interested to see this also, and
absolutely.
I don't know if you have heard anything more from your side, but
no, it's as you say, it's something that's been watched by great interest by the entire industry, and I think what you're saying aligns very much with if you look at all marine major disasters, it's a multitude of factors where one can be, the one that makes it all go wrong. And then maybe it's a stressful situation. Maybe there's a lot of other things that contribute to the risk heightening. This could be the thing that tips it over, because it is still, I would imagine, to many seafarers, a very unusual occurrence. And I suppose it also depends on the subtlety of it, right? Because if it's blatantly obvious that something's interfering with your GPS, then that heightens your other senses and your contingencies or whatever. But if it's very subtle and it's over time, then you might not even notice. You might be heading ashore without knowing. But then that relies on it being a targeted attack, and by what you're saying, that very rarely yet happens.
And that is worth mentioning, right? Also, that much of that GPS spoofing we have seen now is done quite, it's relatively obvious that is going on, because you're taken very far from your original position. Often you're taking a circular pattern or a late straight line or other kind of, where it's relatively obvious that, the position I'm seeing now is false. From a technical perspective, it is possible to perform this in a much more sophisticated way, taking that position just gradually off course, right? It demands a lot. First of all, it demands a lot more of understanding of maritime operation. It probably demands that you're there physically quite close to the vessel to be able to do it. But it's from a technical perspective, it's possible to do that. And of course, then it's much more difficult to detect as a deck officer, obviously. So I think that's also the reason why I think this topic deserves attention. I think from every now and then I hear when you start talking about GPS spoofing or jamming, they say, well, it's not that big of a topic. You will see it once. It will easy to detect, But I think those more, advanced, knock on wood, we haven't seen it yet, but those more advanced spoofing attacks or incidents, it's possible, and would be very difficult to detect. And also the way the kind of the geopolitical situation now is developing in the world, I think quite a few of those big players out there want to have that capability, or not that they want to do it immediately, but that they want to have that capability to do that when or if and when they choose to use it, right?
Yeah. So, could there be other motivations? I mean, the geopolitical one is the obvious one, and it's the one we've seen. But could there be other sort of threat actors who could use interference as a tool to achieve their means. I mean, criminals or terrorists or there's I mean, you're only limited by the imagination. But is that something that you're also monitoring?
Well, at least from our perspective, yes, we've seen some reporting of something simple as car burglars stealing a very expensive car and then using GPS jamming to just hide the location of that vehicle, and
Yes.
that vehicle is by coincidence in a port, or so in those cases, and you've seen some reporting of other kind of very kind of unsophisticated ways, because you can of course buy equipment to either jam but also spoof GPS very on eBay very and it doesn't cost much, but this is more kind of from a criminal low level purpose of just masquerading your position somehow or some way. I believe most of the reporting we see nowadays, especially in the maritime context around the world with GPS jamming and spoofing, is very likely to be in some kind of military activity.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's very, even though, so it may still be, it's occurring with increasing frequency, but the risk of it turning into a disaster, I understand, still might be low. But there's no doubt that if anything goes wrong, we're looking at navigational claims, which we know can be very costly and devastating to loss of life and the environment and everything. So what measures do you think a ship owner should be taking? Well, one, if it does happen, what measures should they take in the event of GNSS interference?
So and actually this is something we will try to summarize in a report, actually, which we try to publish now very soon. And it will be an open report. It will be available as a white paper on our webpage. So that's worth to check out if someone wants to just dig a bit further into what is GPS spoofing and jamming. How can you mitigate? So that's one to look out for. It will be available on our webpage, and if you want to link it in the show notes or something, you can.
We can do that, and you can also give out the address now, so that people can rush to your webpage to read the white paper.
Yeah, so you can check out normacyber.no, and that's where we'll publish it. It will be probably published by the time this podcast is published, right?
Fantastic. Yes, let's aim for that.
Yeah, that's great. So I mean, the measures. First of all, I guess the first thing here is that we really encourage members and others to make seafarers aware of this, and this is happening because we truly believe that good seamanship and is the kind of most important mitigation measure for this. So be aware of that. This can happen. Be aware, especially do an additional risk assessment or put in place measures if you sail into one of these areas, because many of those areas it happened frequently. So, and then secondly, we will also point to some kind of more technical things you could do. There are a whole bunch of different technical things you can do, and you can also buy more receivers, which are more redundant or more kind of which kind of have multi-frequency receivers and other type of more technical receivers. So that is possible to look out for, where you kind of basically, but that means you have to, in many cases, change your physical hardware on board the vessels. But that's kind of one category, is to look into hardening or to look into basically have better equipment to receive the signals, and that actually helps a lot. There's a cost aspect here, obviously, and there's logistic aspect, obviously, to it in shipping. But that's kind of one path to go down, is to look into, and we see quite a few members are looking into that, especially if they're doing more operations where they really rely on GPS, and if in addition then operating in areas like I mentioned, then we have quite a few members who have looked into that, right? So also one you can also kind of have interference or spoofing detection kind of in the device itself. It's also some of these devices can also kind of then not mitigate it itself, but at least provide a detection mechanism or an alert, right? If you see unusual signal strengths or so on. So and then often the antennas I mentioned is often kind of referred to as anti-jam antennas.
Right.
That's
do you see?
Also, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead,
please.
Do you see this becoming more of a usual part of a crew training for ship owners? Is it brought into their training programs?
I believe so. So we have also received a lot of interest from our members when it comes to to provide or to support members with material to support their learning or education. So we have been talking on officer conferences. We have also provided some exercises which our members can use. This is because this is something we do at Norma, is to provide some exercise scenarios which our members can do. These have historically often been focused on kind of cyber attacks or how to handle that. But we have seen now that more and more members, they ask for scenarios which the crew or the officers can use. And we also seen interest, especially into this topic with GPS or GNSS interference, right? So that is something that we've done for all members, just to make some simple scenarios, which just takes you through some different steps of a scenario and just make the crew kind of play through that scenario and talk through what would have done, both on the technical side but also on more procedural. What type of measures should they take before and when something happens?
Is this something that we can expect to see more of? Do you think is it now a part of the seafarers and the ship owners and managers' reality?
I think we will. I think we'll most likely see more of it, and I think also. To be honest, I'm not really sure, right? Because some of the things we've seen now recently, and no doubt this is probably going on more, but I think it's also more widely reported. So also, of course, once we get more attention on the topic, more will report it. And of course, that might be a factor also, right? Is this actually happening more, or is it just being reported more? But I think especially the biggest reason I think why I believe we will see more of this is just because of the situation right in the area in the world right now, in those both geopolitical tensions and regional conflicts. And I guess every navy with respect for itself have this capability, and all kind of insurgent group like the Houthis or all of those now have these military capabilities. So it's really difficult to see. I wish it would be the case, right, where we would see this going to a more peaceful situation. But I guess, unfortunately, that's the biggest driver here, and it doesn't really look like it's gonna fade away.
Well, we can only hope. But in the meantime, I thank you very much, Lars Benjamin, for joining us. I think or you certainly shed some light on what is a very topical subject and one that's going to remain important to shipping going forwards. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Anders. And the listeners might just feel free to reach out if they have questions. I'm available on LinkedIn and just check out our webpage also, where we will publish this report, and you can also find some contact details there if you want to reach out with additional questions or follow-up questions within this topic. So thank you so much.
And to all of you listening, thank you very much, and we look forward to welcoming you again on the Lockton